Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar by the AM Academy. My name is Sven, and today I want to talk about a somewhat niche application of the Raise3D printers, dental. Now, the dentist is normally someone who most of us might just be afraid of, and it's something all of us probably know from our lives, and it's generally a rather unpleasant experience. That's why so many people avoid going to the dentist all the time. But technology has started to make visiting the dentist's office a lot more comfortable. There's things like laser anesthesia now, so you don't have to be injected before the dentist starts working on your teeth. But there's also 3D printing and 3D scanning. More and more today, the doctor will actually use an intraoral 3D scanner to scan your teeth instead of making a mold of them, and then he can 3D print whatever it is you need. For example, if your teeth are crooked and you're looking for a guide to help realign your teeth, such as Invisalign or similar companies, many of those today can actually be 3D printed, custom made for your teeth. But in those cases, printing often costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time. It needs a special resin that as a material that is biocompatible, so you can actually have it in your mouth for extended periods of time, etc., etc. So it's not quite as simple as it may seem at the very beginning. But there is a way to use the Raise3D Pro 3 or E2 or the other Raise3D printers to get to the results you want. Or other printers as well in theory, but today we want to talk about these ones because normally on the Pro 3 you have this flexible steel plate with a build-tack surface on it. But if we replace this, just take it out of the printer and put in an MTplus build plate, we actually have a good starting point for dental applications. MTplus is a special build plate developed by a company, I believe here in Germany, and essentially, it is a reusable build plate that you can print on with PLA, ABS, and a number of other materials. And the bond this build plate creates with the material is actually chemical, rather than just, sticking on it with glue. So there's an actual chemical bond between this build plate and your part while the build plate is hot. Then, as the build plate cools down, those chemical bonds get released, and it becomes really easy to just slide the finished part off of the build plate. So that's step one. This build plate, that due to its super smooth top surface, actually creates a surface similar to that of a glass print bed on your finished part. So this is step one. And then step two for this dental application is a special filament, specifically the Greentec Pro from Extrudr. Why? Because this one is certified. And that's similar to what I mentioned with the resin just a minute ago. This basically means that parts that were created using this plastic are biocompatible, meaning not hazardous for your health. And when you combine the two of these things, the Greentec Pro comes in different colors. This one's gray, but for example, I have a neutral colored one in the printer right now. You can then use that to print the dental model of the patient and use this as the basis for continued treatment. So as I mentioned earlier, the guides for realigning the teeth, they could be directly 3D printed. But what if you lose your guide or you break it or something like that, or it's just outdated and you need a new one? Well, then the doctor would have to print a new one. Whereas printing takes a lot of time and money, the conventional manufacturing method of creating these guides is a lot simpler. You take a dental model and then you vacuum form it around this model. And back then, the creation of the model was the problem, but now we can just 3D print that out of Greentec Pro. So this one specifically, I just downloaded off the internet and I printed this, and now I could use this to vacuum form a dental guide around it, and if I ever lost it or whatever, the doctor would just pick out the same dental model that he still had printed from me and stored in a drawer somewhere. He can just take that out and vacuum form a new one over it, which costs a lot less money and a lot less time than the 3D printing of the guide. So that's why this is interesting. And another benefit, it's just not just the certification of this, but also that it's more heat resistant, meaning that this guide can actually take the heat that would be applied during this vacuum forming process. So there's two components, as I've mentioned. It's the combination of the plate and the plastic, and these two together allow for very interesting dental applications with these printers. Why do I keep mentioning the Raise3D printers? Well, because they are built plates specifically for them. This one right here is for the Raise3D E2, and inside there you can see it, I've got the one for the Pro 3. And you can either use a glue, which is basically a big adhesive tape, to glue the MTplus built plate onto the flexible steel plate and then continue using that instead of the build tack, or you just have a secondary one. Or you do what I did and use these file clips to just clip the built plate in place in the printer and keep it stable and solid that way. Thanks to the automated bed leveling on these printers, you don't even have to worry about a different thickness between the MTplus and the flexible steel plate. The Z probe on the printhead will measure all that on its own and then compensate for any height differences between the different built plates you may use. So as you can see, there's a cool value proposition here that might just be beneficial for your dental practice, and if you visit your dentist the next time, you can suggest to them whether they have ever thought about 3D printing their dental models. So, last but not least, I have a short video with a time lapse of how we printed the dental model, and then how easy it is to get this off the platform, and just how nice this finished part looks. So thank you very much for watching. Look at that tiny time lapse video, and I hope to see you next time for the next webinar. See you then.